Welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to be with Council today for our August 26th regular Council meeting. I would like to start off with, on behalf of Council staff and the community of Olds, I wish to acknowledge Mr. Norman McGuinness, former Chief Administrative Officer for the Town of Olds, who served from June 2008 to October 2016. He was an integral part of the town and devoted volunteer in the community. We offer our sincere condolences to his family on his passing of July 30th, 2024. I call the meeting to order at 1:01 p.m. And I'd ask if there was any added items. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I'd like to add number 4 under closed session SRD RWC, which would be section 16th, disclosure harmful to a business interest of a third party.
Thank you. That's section 16, closed item number 4, SRD. Update from Councillor Ryan. Any further added items? Thank you very much. Seeing none then, I would call for a motion, please, to accept. Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I make the motion to adopt the regular and closed council meeting agenda as amended for Monday, August 26, 2024 at 1 p.m. in council chambers.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Now we'll move down to our regular minutes of the July 8th, 2024 meeting, and I'll be looking for consensus. Does council have any questions, deletions? So we have consensus from council for the minutes for July 8th. Thank you. Delegations and presentations. We'll move right along to page 7 on our agenda, item 3A, RCMP quarterly report. And I'll have our CAO invite our staff sergeant.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Staff Sergeant Warren Wright's with us today, and looking forward to his presentation as always.
Good afternoon. I would imagine you had time to peruse the municipal policing report for our fiscal year of quarter 1, April 1st to June 30th. That being said, rather than, again, go through it step by step, line by line, if you've had a chance to review it, along with the accompanying stats and the letter, are there any questions?
Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and through you to Staff Sergeant Wright. On page 13 of our report here, and I've noticed property crimes in 2021 for the same time period were 161 as compared to 114 for this time period in 2024. Can you kind of clarify what it would attribute to such a significant decrease in property crimes? Is it because, you know, many people don't report them, or we're just not as...
Yeah, it could be a combination of everything, to be honest with you. It could be general underreporting. Or reporting through social media as opposed to contacting the RCMP. It could be just a decline in certain criminal element that weren't in town during those 3 months to create property crime, such as car prowlings, etc. And it also could be increased patrolling through the night.
Thank you for that.
Councillor Ryan.
Thank you very much, Mayor Dahl. Through you to Sergeant Wright. I'm just pointing out on page 8 where we have, where you talk about the traffic totals, and I noticed that there was a fairly significant increase in 2024 here to 230, which goes along with our priority on number 4, which is on page 12 of our agenda. And I'm just wondering, and I wanted to sort of thank you for taking up the priority, obviously, and running with it. But also, I was wondering if you could tell us what the major, if there was any, major infractions are that you're cracking down on within the community?
Well, we always go after the big four, which is speeding, distracted driving, intersection safety, and seatbelts. I know that we had several operations uptown Olds, with regards to intersection safety, crosswalks, and stop signs. So those are usually what the increases are attributed to, and then the secondaries can be anything from unsafe turns to, failing to yield to, there's many different sections within the Traffic Safety Act that we can refer to, but we primarily focus on those four.
Deputy Mayor Daley, and then back to Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Sergeant Wright. On page 9, it says criminal harassment, and it's gone up by 425%. First of all, is there a definition for that criminal harassment, and what is contributing to this? I found that quite concerning.
The second question is easier than the first question because I don't have the criminal code in front of me to define what criminal harassment is, but criminal harassment is exactly what you think it is. It's just bothering somebody else to the point that they have to start altering their behavior to avoid it. Now, in terms of the increase, there is residents in town to 425% increase. So let's say 375% of that 425%. There's specific 3. How much needs attention and
Through you to the staff sergeant, I don't know if I've ever asked this question, but so I just into the fall here, back to school. Anything with what's keeping awake at night, and or any hot thing emerging that perhaps this report yet? Yeah, just curious.
back to school. We traffic initiative in play regarding intersection safety, speed, bicycle safety, and we will be during the school year in various locations at various times to work with the public to ensure that we have a safe area for children to plan on putting some effort and hours into patrolling the school areas just to deter any behavior which could cause injury or harm to other people.
Very good.
Sergeant, the youth training program that you did over the summer with high school kids, I read the article in the newspaper about it. I didn't see it in your report anywhere, but it seemed to go over really well with the young people that were involved in it and the community in general. Is that an initiative that's done locally, or is that an initiative that's done through RCMP National or RCMP divisionally?
Okay, so the first part of that is because it happened in July, it'll be in Q2 report. We're always behind, right? And secondly, it was an idea that was actually borrowed from Three Hills Detachment. Sergeant Jamie Day had done it the year before, and it was incredibly successful. And being that he's our neighbor, and I was watching, we decided to do it ourselves, and unfortunately he couldn't do it this year. So we don't know if it's going to be a back and forth thing, or we're going to try to do it every year, in all likelihood probably every other year. It is in line with our priorities in terms of recruiting and our strategic priorities as they relate to youth. So we're trying to build inroads with the youth. We're also trying to give them exposure as to what RCMP is like, sort of miniature depot for a week, and we're also trying to recruit. And I think it was very successful as well. We had all kinds of representatives from different units within the RCMP, from our sergeant major who did a drill class, to our emergency response team that did an hour or two on what they do, the police dog section, the forensic ident. Unfortunately, I wasn't there for some of it, so I did miss it, but there was a PT class. We had our physical training instructor come down from Edmonton and run them through their paces, and so that they had realized what the physical component was to go to depot. So yeah, it was great, and I know that we had, I believe, was it 13? I think it was about 13 students, of which at the end they all identified that they'd like to become a police officer, whether they join the RCMP or some other municipal police service. I guess that's up to them.
Very good. Thank you very much. I'd also like to thank you for your letter of July 31st, addressed to myself, Staff Sergeant Warren Wright. And thank you for sharing announcement of the G7 meeting scheduled to take place in Kananaskis in 25, and that you're planning and getting ready for that, and you're going to keep our community informed. Thank you for that. As well, I don't believe you're going to be here for our correspondence and information session. Also like to thank you for your detailed Olds Municipal Police Service multi-year financial plan in our agenda from April 1st to 2030. It was a very informative read, and I would encourage people to read that. Are there any other comments or questions?
If there are none, I would like to add
Yes.
something.
Yes.
We did have an increase in municipal enforcement this quarter, and that was as a result of our officers resolving issues such as busking and panhandling and other, perhaps even fighting. In a non-criminal sense, we were able to use the tools that the municipal legislation had provided to us to deal with it at a lower level and maybe more appropriate levels. So we did have a substantial increase in municipal enforcement, like bylaw tickets.
That's great information sharing. Thank you. If there's no further questions, I'd ask for a motion then, please. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Daley.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that council accept the Royal Canadian Mounted Police quarterly report as presented.
Thank you. Those in favor? That is carried. And thank you for your time here with us today. And again, thanks for all the information and correspondence. All right, we're going to be moving down now to item 3B, page 18, please. Protective Services Quarterly Report. Who will be giving us that report? Director Andrew.
Yes, we have Director Andrew with us today. Good luck, Justin.
I don't know how
I'm so nervous. Let's see here. If I can find it, we're in better shape.
It's the next page.
Oh. There we go. Okay, we're off to a good start. Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Great to be back after a summer break. So we'll give you some thrilling statistics and summaries to start off your fall term. Looking at our Protective Services budget summary, looking at the blue area of our operating budget, these are just our budget allocations or percentages remaining. I don't take a lot of credence with them simply because of the way we purchase things and the way things fall. So we are looking good in all aspects of our budget as far as being on track to utilize them effectively and not be over. We have seen some positives as far as budgetary items, just simple fact that our fire budget, we are sitting in a position where we're going into month 9 of the year, and one of our biggest ticket items being our firefighter honorarium is it's a little less than 50% spent, which is always a good thing for us, and that just shows that we're not being called out as often as we anticipate, so that's a savings on our people and our resource. When we look at our RCMP, the last one, it shows that there's 80% remaining. That is because they only bill in specific periods. So no, we're not getting a huge discount on RCMP. We just haven't got the bill yet. So just don't want you to have plans with money that's already spent. When we look at the revenue side, the green, these numbers are generally positive, which has some history to it. So when we start looking, we've created some codes or some lines in here that weren't previously itemized, and with our change to the fire bylaw and the fee for service recovery model that was implemented before the break, we've started to kind of break out some of these revenues that we've had. Now, again, with the revenues, these aren't necessarily in place because of that structure put in formally at that point. It does have a lot to do with the volume of calls and the type of calls before. So we were invoicing for service previously as per the old guidelines, and so things like house fires and larger scale incidents would see or be responsible for those large revenues. And same with motor vehicle collisions. The spring and the winter previously were quite busy, so we had a lot of activity. So those numbers are there for that reason. But with the new changes implemented, we are seeing, so I think the next quarter report will give you a better picture of what that looks like. But generally, things are promising. When you look at the municipal enforcement portion towards the bottom, again, we're working on some areas there that enhanced patrol and enforcement. We'll see some positive gains. The biggest one that you won't see in this report because it's only happened recently would be unsightly premises. There has been, and bylaw fines, there's been a lot of activity in the last few weeks over the summer where there was a shift to a proactive response, going out to the community and looking for problems. And as a result, there'll be a lot of I wouldn't say revenue per se, but there'll be a lot of activity to report on the next time that I'll share. Our statistics, again, are in line with typical for this period. We had a fairly steady, again, winter and into the spring, and it was kind of just a variety of things, but the big piece for us is trying to make sure that we stay on top of the alarm calls and the false alarms, which seem to be managed relatively well, again, considering what the past has been. Our rural fire activity was fairly limited. Again, with the dry spring, there was a period there where there was fire bans, but once the fire bans were established, we actually didn't go out again, which was a good thing. So we're hoping to keep that trend going into the fall. Training hours for our firefighters, in the second quarter, there was 984 cumulative hours of firefighter training. And that's of all of our members, which is a pretty substantial amount of time spent on maintaining skills and readiness, but nice to have. And with a thriving membership base that we have, that's a lot of time spent by people enhancing their service. Some of our challenges and accomplishments of that quarter, we're starting to experience the situation with firefighter response and the coverage during holidays, such as long weekends and in the summer. It doesn't mean that we don't have coverage, but the big thing is that as everybody's busy and they want to enjoy summer holidays and vacations with their families, we do have to try to maintain coverage. And so the hard part is as our demand for service increases and the expectation of the community, then we have to be able to do that with a solid base of members being dedicated to that time. In the past, firefighters would volunteer to stay around for a long weekend, for example, in the summer, and they would be compensated a very small amount of money for their dedicated response that weekend. And so we are looking at some opportunities and some differences in how we could make that incentive lucrative enough to attract people to do that come fall. So that's something that we'll be bringing forward for next year, I think, in operational opportunities. Repair and maintenance costs, again, just like anything, we are seeing much higher than inflationary rates, and the cost it's costing us to fix our trucks and our equipment. Supply chain issues, again, there's so many issues at hand here about how long it takes us to get things. An example would be is that we had some fire hose that were damaged. Well, they were partially stolen when thieves had broken into the ops center there back in the winter, and we ordered those to be replaced, and we still haven't got them. And so that's 7 months, I think, since that happened. So that's the problem with some of our stuff, is that we're putting in orders already right now for stuff that we anticipate to get next year. So that unfortunately isn't changing. And previously to our modifications to our bylaw and billing practices in the spring, again, there were some issues that came up and challenges there. I would love to tell you that in this quarterly report it was all resolved, but the next report, I'll tell you the good news is that I think we've got it resolved. So this is the kind of the chicken and egg scenario. So things that we want to celebrate, our accomplishments. We had 7 recruit firefighters that completed their training and moved into the probationary firefighter status, which is great. We had 16 fire cadets that participated in the program last fall, and 4 of those fire cadets have sought and are accepted as regular members upon their graduation from high school and turning 18. So we have a couple of them that are waiting for that elusive 18th birthday before they can fully join, but that's a pretty successful recruitment strategy and or program. And the sneak peek coming up is that we are anticipating over 50 applicants for the fall intake, so it's a pretty substantial increase. The other accomplishment, the integration of the drone first responder program with the University of Alberta. So we've been actively participating through the summer months. We've utilized the drone in several different emergency situations in the last few months, and some of them we can't speak to just simply because of the nature of what they were, but we are working in close correlation with the RCMP and other response agencies. And again, we will provide some further feedback on that program in the next quarterly report. So, emergency or municipal enforcement statistics. So we looked at some of the breakdowns of what we've been doing. You can see the numbers there of what our officers are spending time dealing with. The one thing of concern is, I shouldn't say concern, but of mention is Zone 4 is the largest area, or the area with the largest number of concerns raised by citizens. So that map doesn't show Zone 4, it just shows the town of Olds map, which we were trying to change rapidly before. But Zone 4 is essentially the downtown core. It goes over to 57th, and it goes up to Highway 27 on the south side, so basically everything from the train tracks west. And so that area has a particular high number of community related complaints and requests from the public for enforcement, so that area has been a target of our activity here in the summer months, so we'll report on that in the next quarter. The tickets issued, complaints received, again, it's all fairly standard. Again, when we go and do proactive work versus reactive, these numbers will change just because the amount of time allocated to follow up on complaints is offset when you're actually going out proactively, with that in mind. And so again, I'll have a better report on a different explanation or comparison to give you in the fall when we can actually show you when we focus our time specifically to being proactive versus the reactive and what that does to the stats. And it is quite, it's quite promising actually, because it does generate a lot of extra work, but it's interesting when you open the door to looking at ensuring compliance in a variety of bylaws and circumstance, how much time it takes for the follow-up, and then the prevention of the activity to return without expected measure or consequence, I should say. Challenge and accomplishments. So some of the challenges would be, again, the increased instances of non-compliance. We're finding that there's a lot of situations where people are just generally not willing to comply. The whole premise of, just be a good neighbor and don't create a problem. We see some spikes in that where it's just, people just don't care or don't want to, and as a result they involve law enforcement or municipal enforcement in trying to seek resolution. Again, this unneighborly conduct, again, there's a lot of complaints that come as a result. So as Staff Sergeant Wright mentioned that there was those criminal harassment cases, there can be a very small number of people that can account for a lot of work, and it does spill over to municipal enforcement as well. So the numbers that they were speaking to, seeing that increase, have definitely impacted municipal enforcement, because it typically starts there, and then when it gets to a point where now it's criminal in nature, then it passes over to the RCMP, and then sometimes it even still continues. So we're definitely tasked with maintaining some peace and conduct in certain situations. Local issues like homelessness and panhandling or busking, so that was a bit of a spike in the spring. Again, when the bylaws changed to give the RCMP and municipal enforcement tools to manage it, it has decreased. And so I would like to say that some of our prolific offenders that were causing a big amount of the problem have moved on, which is great. But there are still transient cases that come through from time to time that do require getting on very quickly. Responding to the judicial system pressures and outcomes, again, this is an issue where the court system is taxed with the process, and so we're seeing the fallout from that it has impact on our enforcement system, whether it's the successful prosecution of infractions or whether the court is deeming things appropriate to prosecute. Big wins for us, obviously, the review of the bylaws and revisions that were made to the CSB, traffic animals. Those are all paying dividends because it's clear legislation, it's more concise. And as Staff Sergeant Wright mentioned, now the RCMP are utilizing those bylaws to the benefit of everyone because it gives a lower level response to certain instances instead of having to go provincial or criminal, which is great. The incorporation of the playground zones and the general community compliance to those speed changes. Yes, we do see and hear of concerns and complaints, in various forms about the changes, but generally we are seeing that the community has responded in a positive fashion. We're seeing decreased speeds in those troubled areas, and we're seeing general compliance. So as far as ticketing, tickets being issued in those areas, it's very minimal. So as many complaints as we see and hear, people are following the intent, which is what we were looking for. Maintaining the patrol presence in the prolific offense areas. Again, this is that small, very small group of people that create a lot of work, and the biggest thing is maintaining the compliance and being there consistently does help with the reoffense. So that's our goal there. Again, some areas, and an example would be is like the no parking zone in the pool. When college comes back in, we're going to spend a lot of time there because we get college students that will park in the pool parking lot, even though they've been clearly told they're not allowed to. But when we go there every day and give them tickets and warnings and ultimately tow their vehicle if we have to, then that's what prevents it from happening. And the last was seeing some follow through on unsightly premises with demolition of derelict properties. So we've had success with a few of those around town. We've seen some great movement there that we're not hanging on to these properties. We do have a few more in the works. So there's improvements that are coming that you'll see in specific areas around town. And again, the whole premise is to get rid of the old that's not going to be fixed and makes way for new development and building, which is ultimately the goal. So into emergency management. So one of the challenges was with Deputy Chief Bibeau, it was trying to get an emergency management team active. So she was actively recruiting and getting new people and excitement into the team and building the confidence and the skills of the people that are there. So she's been working through the spring and summer on that, and she'll have a better report in the fall, but we're sitting in a really good position. She does have 90% completion on the ICS 200 training for all of the team, which is no small task. And there is plans to go further with the ICS 300 in the fall. Tabletop exercise was completed, and it focused on the big traffic accident that we had on Highway 2, and I think it was in December. And so Alberta Emergency Management accepted that because of the after-action review that we conducted involving all the agencies that were there. So that checked off our compliance. Crisis communication plan has been created and is being maintained now with our communications coordinator, and so that is a great opportunity to go back and forth and keep it up to date. And we've been participating in joint initiatives with the county and Kneehill County through training and tabletops and planning. So it's just good to get ourselves out there and see what other people are doing and help out, and then in turn they do that for us. So looking ahead quickly for quarter three, for fire, we're doing our testing of apparatus and certifications. We want to see what our response coverage and deployment pressures were and how we responded to them. And we will be integrating our new fire recruits and getting them off of their probationary period. I can say that we haven't had any of them quit on us so far, so that's a good thing, because usually it's you either love it or you don't. Municipal enforcement, we're working at some fleet repairs and long-standing issues that we've been dealing with our two patrol vehicles. The electrical gremlins seem to be non-ending, so we're trying to resolve that. Some of the unsightly property, again, this is what we've been working on the last couple of weeks. I can say that just at a very high level, officers have created over 90 files in the last 2 weeks dealing with unsightly properties, and the follow-up that's going to come, and again, we'll report on that in the next quarter, but that's a pretty substantial hit, and this is across the board. So their goal is to hit the entire town through the summer months, so it's not being targeted on one specific area. Everybody will be viewed, and this is being applied universally. This is not just residents, it's commercial properties, industrial properties, vacant lots, you name it, it's all there. So that, again, will come with more detail later. Obviously, the implementation of the revised bylaws and the monitoring of the compliance, we're looking to see how our changes have impacted our service and what they're going to do to the outcomes, to see if we have better compliance and less issues. So again, those will be good things going forward. I let the cat out of the bag, so ICS training for emergency management. We are working on the tabletop exercise that we're working on for the full-scale mock exercise next year that will involve a few different partner agencies. So that will be a large-scale event that will be an excellent opportunity for us to test our team and our capabilities in town. And then if we can implement the crisis communication plan going forward for any kind of a situation, even simple things like, you know, when we had our water issue last year, that's what this document is there for in this process, so that we can get accurate information to the public quickly and continuously. So I'm sure you're tired of listening to me talk, so if you have any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
We never get tired of your storytelling. We'll start with Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have two quick questions. When you talked about training in the firefighting training hours on page 21, we had talked about it before. Does that include, or are we doing any paramedic training?
So yes, that would include some medical training in that time frame. So some of the things that we do annually was all of our members receive recertification in, you know, their first aid and CPR training. So it doesn't matter about what card they carry, we just do it every year. And then further to that, we do have specific skill-based training that our firefighters are upgrading with, things like advanced first aid, which is a course that we've started to offer in the last couple of years, which takes them above the level of, you know, a basic first aider, which is a 80-hour course in its own. And then when they recert every 3 years, that's 40 hours that they have to spend to do it. So we have various members at different stages of taking the course for the first time or recerting. And I can't tell you exactly out of these hours how much of that is, but that is part of our yearly plan.
Supplemental, as we had another question.
Yeah, sorry, I meant specifically paramedic training, not the first aid training, which I assume all the firefighters have. No, we had talked about in the past that we do have several members of our team that are paramedics, yourself included. But we had talked about the possibility of conducting more training and training more firefighters as paramedics. So have we, or are we doing any of that, or is there any plan to continue with that process?
Fair enough. So the people who on the department do qualify or are certified as a paramedic, so either as a primary care or advanced care paramedics, we do provide opportunities to do their annual maintenance training. So myself included as an advanced care paramedic, I have to conduct so many continuing education credits to maintain my certification and license. And so I do that typically on my own, simply because there's only myself and one other at the advanced care level that have to do it, and the other member is an employee of EMS, so she gets that opportunity through her workplace. But the members that are primary care paramedics do some various training that we do provide opportunity on. As far as offering that course training itself, we have not offered that yet, simply because the situation that comes is the cost and the time commitment is, until we can get an opportunity where we could host the course here, it's not conducive for anybody that's working any kind of a full-time job, because it's like 3 months of training Monday to Friday in Edmonton or Calgary. So we are cautiously and anxiously looking at what the province is doing with opportunities for firefighters, and if there is that chance, we will jump on it for sure.
Councillor Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Through you to Director Andrew. I was interested in the emergency management. In fact, that you've talked about working together with external agencies. I was asked by somebody in the community about if we had a coordinated plan, say if there was a wildfire that swept through Sundre and they were evacuating the town, including, people out of the hospital and seniors. I mean, it would be just, understandable that they would come towards Olds as an evacuation, and whether or not we had any kind of plan in place, and do we coordinate with them as well? So that was kind of my question on that.
Yes, thank you. So we do, through the Mountain View Regional Emergency Management Program, we do coordinate through the different municipalities in Mountain View County, and there are conversations about that kind of circumstance for sure. A prime example would be a few years back when there were the floods in Sundre. That was exactly what happened, is that there was people pushed towards Olds. Obviously, you go to high ground and somewhere where you can be relatively close. So I'd love to tell you that, we have every detail and every contingency worked out in that plan. We don't, but it is definitely in the forefront, and it is part of our ongoing communications and training about what kind of resources are available and who, what, when, and where. I will draw this to your attention because I think through Alberta municipalities there is a resolution going forward that speaks to this, because this is a problem where if a community suffers a disaster, then the neighboring communities end up taking on a lot of the load, and there's not a lot of guarantee about the financial support from the province or from the federal government. And so we did prepare the briefing note on that resolution for you to consider when you're there at the conference, that it is something that we should look at, because it's true. There's a lot of financial burden that happens to neighboring municipalities when something happens. And so a disaster can spread locally very quickly, and it's because financially you may not be able to support it. And so yeah, that's hopefully that answers most of your question. Yeah.
Thanks, Councillor Blatz, and then back to Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and through you to Director Andrew. With our increased traffic and RCMP, municipal enforcement and traffic patrols, when you talk about unsightly premises and trees and foliage impingement on municipal property, what about the trees and foliage on a private property that impede vision when you're entering into an intersection? I know part of the RCMP's Uptown Olds drive was to educate people to stop and then roll through the crosswalk instead of coming to a rolling stop. But it just brought to my attention on the weekend that some people are concerned with, intersections that are impeded by trees and shrubs. So are we able to deal with that through our CSB?
So to a certain extent, yes, we are. The one thing that it does have tied to is the land use bylaw. And that is one of those traditional documents where when people build and, plant trees and develop a property, the guidelines that they use are based on that. And so there is some struggle there, because with the land use bylaw being as old as it is, there are some different thoughts. And so we do have to be careful, because when we're going through, our officers do try to use as best a judgment as they can, and respecting people's property and what they have. And so it's not a cut and dried black and white type of answer that I know you're seeking, and I can't give that to you. But when the land use does go forward for review, that'll definitely be an area that we need to consider, because traffic sight lines are definitely a concern, especially when you come to intersections that traditionally may not have been very busy, but now, whether it's through design or just through the growth of town, they become a lot busier. And the prime example I'll give you is Winter Drive. Winter Drive was never designed to be a collector, and it has turned into one just simply because of the growth of town and the traffic routing. And so as a result, sight lines, I'm not saying that Winter Drive has poor sight lines, but it's a road that wasn't intended for its use, and it's being used differently. And so we're going to have to revisit that and look at it. But if people have concerns, we would always encourage them to contact us and to take a look at it, even case by case in certain cases or instances.
Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and through you to the director. I'm just wondering if you've got any off-the-cuff thoughts, comments relative to your comments on the increasing disorder and/or unneighborly conduct and disobedience. Is there anything council can be considering or should be considering or looking at to help mitigate that increasing issues? You've talked about the enforcement and bylaws and tickets, but to me that seems to be a little bit of a catch-22. The more tickets we are generating, the more administrative burden we have to push that paper, and then we obviously have to collect those tickets. So is there anything off the cuff that you can think of?
Yes, thanks, Councillor, for the question. And of course, this one will be the question that you regret asking, but it's always a resource thing, is having the resources available to respond to these in a proactive approach. It's one of those things where it's like a lot of times, there's a lot of, that's the ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And it truly is one of those circumstances that we do see, the general discontent in some of these aspects is because, you get this back and forth kind of cat and mouse game where people get fed up. And I'd love to say that if you gave us all the resources in the world, we would eliminate all of it, and that's not going to happen. But it is one of those premises where, again, it's having that consistent approach and response to things that in a timely fashion can make a big difference, where if we don't have to drop everything that we're doing to go and address something quickly, or if we have the resource available to go and address it quickly without taking away from something else, it certainly does help that opportunity. So, and again, having the community know that there is a consequence for poor behaviors or poor choices is a deterrent in itself. When there's no laws or there's no follow-up of the law, it's amazing what people will try to do or not do. So consistency is definitely one of our standard approaches, and I think you will see some positive movement with revised bylaws as such, because we get rid of the fluff, we make it more concise, and now that, and it's not that we get quick to hand out tickets, because we always strive to educate, but if you understand there's a consequence for your behavior, it might deter.
Yes, Deputy Mayor Daley?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Through you to Director Andrew. Director, we had a contingency of firefighters that went to Jasper to help out with their issues there. I was just wondering if you could give us a bit of an update on that as well.
Certainly. So we were requested on the Wednesday night when the fire conditions were increasing in Jasper, and the province put out essentially an all-call for resources. So we were able to respond with a pumper truck with a contingent of 4, left Wednesday evening about 8 o'clock at night, and they arrived early in the morning up there to the site, and they stayed until Sunday, dealing with kind of the aftermath and dealing with hot spots in the location. And so when we responded in conjunction with Mountain View County. Obviously, CAO Williams spoke with the CAO of the county to make sure that it was a collaborated response as per our agreement, and they were supportive of that mission. And we went because of the urgency of the nature, and when the urgency kind of declined where it was more of a mop-up operation, then we did choose to bring our resources home simply because we had our own jurisdiction to look after, and we were concerned at that time as well. The other thing that was ongoing is that we did send one of our incident management team members up to Jasper to work in their incident command post after the fact, which was great. So one of the team that DC Bibeau has brought on, and that was Mr. Randy Smith, who had a long history of fire service and now a local resident. So he went up and helped out kind of in their command post after our suppression staff left, if you will. So great opportunity for learning and resource sharing So,
Supplemental, we've spent quite a bit of time on this subject, so go ahead and complete.
Just a comment.
Go ahead.
I would just like to thank those who volunteered to go up to Jasper and, that dedication to helping out our fellow communities in the province of Alberta. It's very much appreciated. So I'd just like to extend that to Director Andrew to pass on to those that were involved.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Daley, and thank you, Director Andrew, for your report today. I'd like a motion, please, for the report. I believe, I'm going to go to this side this time. Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that council accepts the Protective Service quarterly report as presented for information.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. And now we will move down to page 27, and this is item 3C, Corporate Services Quarterly Report. I believe the Director of Finance, Sheena, will be speaking to that.
Thank you. Yes, so today is the Corporate Services Quarterly Report, which is January to June 30th. The first slide is just kind of a department overview. Nothing has changed in the first few months here, so we can move on to the next. A quick overview of some of the projects we've been working on over the last couple months. We had our municipal intern start May 27th, Vanessa Hu. She has been working closely with CAO Williams on some housing needs assessments, housing strategy research documents, and closely with Director Pedro on some of the citywide transition, which is our GIS and maintenance manager system. So she's been keeping very busy. Next, we've been working on our maintenance manager implementation. That all went live July 1st, so any reporter problem, Councillor Wilson's very happy. Any reporter problems come in now through the website, go straight to our new system, and a service request / work order is created. So there's been a few little bumps along the road, but we're all getting into a process, and it's been really well received by all staff, so it's been really great. Next up for that is the preventative maintenance portion, so that's kind of more of the facilities maintenance and all the scheduling of the maintenance and stuff like that. Next, I've also been working on the budget software implementation, which is complete. I've started training actually just this week, so all staff will be using that now for the 2025 budget preparation. And then we had our budget engagement, which ran from May 27th to July 5th. We had 379 responses. The full survey will be presented to council at the next meeting on September 3rd. This next slide is just yearly update, so that was done in Q1, so this won't change until 2025. So moving on to the next slide, we have our property tax and utilities. We did do a utility blitz of all our pre-authorized and e-billing in the second quarter, so you can see those percentages went up slightly. We are now sitting at just over 52% in e-billing, which is great. Property taxes remain the same from Q1 to Q2 at 51%. Again, that's a great uptake for that. Next, new last quarter, I mentioned we are starting to report now on the water meter, no reads and zero reads. So a no read typically means that there's an issue with the meter, or the MXU and work orders are now scheduled through our new system. And then our operators will investigate. The zero reads typically have a reason, so they're followed up with emails or phone calls from our utilities administrator, such as when people leave for the winter or on holidays is typically a reason. If there is no reason, then we send out an operator to go check. And again, so those numbers decreased a little bit in Q2, down to 149. Next, we have our grants. So in Q2, we had 2 grants submitted and 1 grant received. The successful grant was the Heritage Canada Celebrate Canada grant for $5,000. We are still waiting to hear back on 3 grants, which some of them are going back, Infrastructure Canada going back to submitted in 2022. So yeah, sometimes it's a bit of a process. Next, we have our procurement. So in second quarter, we had 12 RFPs go out, and we awarded 8 contracts. or 9, sorry. So we awarded our half-ton for parks, the municipal engineering services, the CCTV inspection services, our parks tractor, trenches relining, sanitary manhole relining, and our concrete repair program. So busy, busy time, obviously, second quarter, because all the work is completed over the summer months. Next, we have our, instead of me running through the financial reports, I've just got a little summary on each here. So first is our operating summary. For the financial reports, I amalgamated both the operating and the utilities, but in this presentation, I've separated the two so you can get an idea of how they're doing separately. So for at 50% of the way through the year, we have spent or recognized 19.8 million in revenue, which is 78% of budget. Of course, property taxes being our main source of revenue came in the second quarter. For expenses, we have 10.8 million has been spent to date, which is 40% of budget, well under the 50% marker. Expenses are projected to be approximately 70,000 under budget, but revenue also is projecting to be less than budgeted. So this will leave us with a forecasted deficit of approximately $36,000. So next, moving on to the utilities. In our utilities operating budget, as at June 30th, 4.3 million has been recognized as revenue, and 3.8 million has been spent. The 6-month forecasts are showing a deficit, with the water and inflow and infiltration actual losses projected to exceed what we had budgeted for. We're looking at an approximate deficit of about 170,000 at this point. But again, at halfway through the year, it is hard to forecast those numbers because you are spending in different rates at each month. Moving on to our capital. I've got a big mess here. We have spent 1.3 million, or just under 25%. Again, our biggest months, obviously, summer, so your third quarter report will show a significant increase. We had 29 projects approved this year. Of those, only 1 project has not started, 16 are in progress, 9 are complete, and 3 have been delayed. Next, we have our council remuneration update. So overall, everyone is right on track at 50% spent. Included in the financial reports was a more detailed breakdown split by councillor and category. As Councillor Blatz had to leave, she did ask me if I could clarify why registrations, for the most part, have been expended in almost all councils' budgets. And it is because it includes your registration in Alberta Munis, even though that conference hasn't happened yet. The money was spent earlier. And that is it, I think, for that. Next, we just have our looking ahead. So we are continuing to work on the records digitization. This will include an accounts payable modernization, electronic. And with that, we have put on hold our purchase order implementation that was approved at the beginning of this year, because most of those systems include purchase order and accounts payable. You would put them together. And as I mentioned, we started on our 2025 budget and still working on a corporate services business plan.
Thank you for that summary. Questions? Councillor Ryan.
Thank you very much, Mayor Dolan. Through you to Director Lindeman. Can you tell us which project was not started and the 3 that were delayed? Do we have any idea of that, or should we
Yes,
be
I
asking
can.
CEO Williams?
No, I do have that. I just need to find. So the one that has not been started yet is our fire hydrant replacement program. And the delayed is the 57th and 54th roundabout engineering. I believe those came in a lot more expensive than anticipated, so it's been delayed.
That project was actually cut. The delayed project is 67A engineering, I believe. 57, 54, we didn't proceed with that one.
Yeah, so that's why it's
We
delayed.
did actually pull it
Okay.
in total, so.
And then the Sportsplex South Ramp replacement has been delayed, and the scoreboards at Rotary Athletic Park. Those ones we're waiting on minor ball, just because we are doing it in conjunction. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and through you to either the director or perhaps the CEO, or maybe I shelve it and wait for Director Adrian at a future time. But I'm just wondering, like, how smart are meters, and like you talked about zero reads and no reads or whatever. And, you know, we have had a couple instances of billing challenges and or people being vacant from their house and water running and causing a bit of a flood. Do we have the ability to set a tolerance? I realize we're talking thousands of residential and commercial buildings, and so monitoring may be challenging and difficult, but do we have the ability to set a tolerance that says, okay, you know, your normal consumption is so many cubes and your plus or minus this amount, and then all of a sudden that sets off a follow-up, a call, an inquiry? Do you know what I mean?
So that is what we do currently. So when the meter reads are done, of course it's a month behind, right? So when the meter reads are done, it could have happened at the beginning of the month, but that is what our utilities coordinator does. She goes through the reports and all the high lows and phones and follows up with them.
Okay, I mean, I was thinking more like real time, so like it's Monday,
So-
here's a read, and now it's Tuesday
Right.
and my phone rings.
Yep.
On that part, no. Our current meters don't have that technology. We are, as council funded in 2023's budget, in the midst of a meter pilot program. We have installed 100 smart meters around town, and those they do have the capacity, and we do have the ability to have residents in real time check their own consumption on an account, for instance, if it was to be rolled out completely, or we could inversely set our own parameters to notify us when there's high consumption at a residence. It's a bit of bandwidth for us administratively to contact potentially some portion of 4,000 plus meters in town, but it's certainly technology that exists in some form. Obviously, a pilot program is just that. We don't want to speak to its complete efficacy yet, but it's certainly the way meters are trending right now, and we hope to offer that to residents who are particularly concerned about their consumption, who spend, say, a large amount of times away from home during the winter usually. And because right now we're probably on a 3-year timeline to replace all the meters in town, as they are all aging into obsolescence and oftentimes inaccuracy, but yeah.
Go ahead, supplemental.
Most definitely, thank you, and a very brief supplemental. And what's roughly the cost of one of these new smart meters, approximately, if you know?
Around $1,000.
Very good, thank you very much, and thank you for your report. So at this point, I would please ask for a motion for accepting the report, please. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move the council accepts the Corporate Services Quarterly Report as presented for information.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Those in favor? That is carried. Very good. I see we have the gallery members here for our next items. We're doing bylaws. Thank you. I'll see you again. I just want to remind council members, we've been away for a while, that we do have first reading for 2 of these bylaws. And when a bylaw requires a public hearing, elected officials are encouraged to reserve all debate until after the public hearing has been conducted and public input on the proposed bylaw has been received. So we have our municipal land use planner, Kyle Sloan, at the podium. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yes, I was going to say these are both for first reading, so I'll be brief as well. The first request for decision is related to 2 bylaws that are linked. This is for, we've received an application for a land use bylaw amendment to rezone lots 18 and 19, Block 11, Plan 472I, that's 5102 48th Avenue, from general residential, the R2 district, to medium density residential, R3 district. The proposed rezoning would require an amendment to the East Olds Area Redevelopment Plan, which is why we have 2 bylaw numbers here. So the first, bylaw 2024-28, is the amendment to the zoning map in the East Olds ARP. That needs to be amended first before the land use bylaw can be amended, because the land use bylaw has to comply with the approved area redevelopment plan. There is no current development linked to this application, but the landowner is looking to redevelop a number of dwellings that are higher than what the R2 district allows. Related to previous applications, I did make them aware that an amendment to the East Olds ARP requires that they submit rationale supporting or explaining why and how their application meets the meets policy 5.1.5 of the ARP, which says that they have to submit rationale outlining objectives within that document that align with their proposal. And they have done that on page 50. This site is located in a block that has seen a lot of change in recent years, including earlier this year when 2 development permits totaling 12 more dwelling units were approved directly across the street. On page 49, there's a map that shows the subject parcel for this application, and then number 2 on the map shows where those development permits were approved. So this rezoning would, in administration's view, be consistent with recent changes on the street, and 48th Avenue still acts as a physical barrier separating this higher density development that we are already seeing to the lower density residential residences that exist further to the east. The recommendation is that bylaw 2028 or 2024-28 and 2024-29 be given first reading as presented. That Monday, September 23rd, 2024, at 1 p.m. in council chambers be set at the date, as the date, time, and place for a joint public hearing on both bylaws. And as a reminder, the land use bylaw stipulates that amendments to the land use bylaw that come from an application from a property owner must be given first reading, and council must set a public hearing date. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And any questions to our municipal land use planner, Kyle, directly related to what he shared with us? Other than that, I would ask for first reading, please. We'll start, somebody over here? Okay, Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Mayor. Do you want all of them or just the first one?
We'll do all separately.
Okay. I move that bylaw number 2024-28, amendment to the East Olds Area Redevelopment Plan, be given first reading as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Cummings. I'll ask for the call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Now we're looking for 2024-29, and that would be Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that bylaw number 2024-29, amendment to the land use bylaw 01-23, be given first reading as presented.
Walsh. I will now call the vote. And we now look
Mayor Dahl, I make the motion as the date joint public hearing on bylaws number 2024-28 and 2024-29.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. I'll call for the vote, please. Those in favor? That is carried. And before you leave, Mr. Sloan, I noticed that our new development officer, Nathan Hill, is here. If you'd just like to stand up so we all know who you are. He does our development permits, is that correct?
That's correct. Nate joined us in planning and development June 22nd, I believe, from Lethbridge County. And so far, I'm hearing great reviews from the public and my colleagues.
Well, welcome, Nathan. Thank you for coming this afternoon. Very good. We will now go to page 55 of your agenda, please. Item 4B, and this is 2024-30 land use bylaw. Once again, Mr. Sloan.
Thank you again. This land use bylaw amendment was initiated by administration based on past conversations at council and other developments, trends that we've been seeing recently in the town. It relates to the cash in lieu option that the land use bylaw outlines for development within the C1 Central Commercial District, where when a development doesn't meet the minimum parking requirements, there's an option, if council chooses to agree to it, that the developer can pay cash as set out in the rates bylaw in lieu of providing those parking stalls. And we've seen interested that was approved. There's developments in the highway commercial districts that are East Olds, the town, are not able to take advantage, at least presented because of the wording of the bylaw. So proposed amendment wording that option beyond the C1 to all within the Uptown Old and East Old development. The last couple of months that was to be taken out of there. The zoning could be in the land use bylaw, not the rates bylaw. So the resolution here is the bylaw 2020-30, or amendment to the land use bylaw, be given first reading as that Monday.
Those in favor? That is carried. Ryan.
For 23rd, or at 1 p.m. in council chamber is the date.
And would
Procedural bylaw, which I hope review and have a updated version probably by its end. I think some of the provisions contained within of council's all three readings are for discussion.
Thank you very much, C.O. Williams. I will open the floor then at this time if council has any further questions. Seeing none then, I would ask for a motion, please, for first reading. And, or if council's comfortable, we'll just go ahead and give all three readings. We'll start with first reading, please. Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I make the motion that council gives first reading to the ad hoc committee bylaw 2024-36 as presented to establish a committee to review the town's procedural bylaw.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. At this time, I would ask all those in favor. That is carried. Are we comfortable to move forward for all three readings? Councillor Cummings?
I'll put the motion through for second reading.
Councillor Cummings gives second reading to bylaw 2024-36. All those in favor? That's carried. I'm looking for consent for third and final reading, please. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move for consent to move to a third and final reading of ad hoc committee bylaw 2024-36 as presented, as it is to establish a committee to review the town's procedural bylaw.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ryan. I call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. And third and final reading over here. Councillor Walsh.
Yes, I would give third and final reading to bylaw number, no, that's the wrong one. To procedural bylaw.
Very good, thank you. All those in favor? That's carried. Yes, C.O. Williams, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Dahl, and thank you for all three readings. So on September 6th, we'll bring forward the committee appointment RFD, looking for 3 members, but if there's interest, if you could let Legislative Clerk McKinnon know prior to that date, just for give us a heads up in case we have to have ballots prepared, but certainly September 6th will bring forward that.
Question, Councillor Ryan?
Thank you, and thank you, CEO Williams. I do believe that at the last appointments that we did for the ad hoc committee, we noted that both myself and Councillor Blatz have not sat on an ad hoc committee. So certainly those two names would go forward, and then we can determine who would be the third member.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My apologies. We're moving down now to new business, and we are in new business. Page 82, please. And item 5B is mid-sized town mayor's caucus terms of reference.
Madam Mayor, I think we
Sorry.
missed page 61, the council code of conduct.
Sorry,
bylaw
that's
review.
where I thought we were at. I had that marked there. I skipped ahead. Thank you. Page 61 of your agenda, please. Council Code of Conduct Bylaw Review. We'll just do this motion all together. Who would like to make this motion? Councillor Wilson. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I make the motion that council accepts for information the committee's proposed recommendations on bylaw 2024-35, policy 103C, terms of reference, policy 107C, elected official appointments, policy 113C, public at large appointments as presented, and directs administration to bring forward to the next regular council meeting for consideration.
Thank you. I will now call for the vote. Those in favor? Oh, sorry.
Apologies here, Madam Mayor. Are we going to have a discussion at this at all, or just accept, because I really do have a couple of comments on this one that I don't want to get past.
Yes, thank you very much. We did agree to speak to this, and I believe our chairperson was Deputy Mayor Daley. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. So, yeah, we were put together as an ad hoc committee to go through these policies and bylaws to not only do housekeeping, to modernize them, and also to change some of the points that are outlined in red in your package here today. The committee consisted of Mayor Judy Dahl, Councillor Harvey Walsh, and myself, as well as administrative support from Legislative Clerk Marcy McKinnon. And our excellent work has come up with these documents that you see in front of you. And the things that we have changed, of course, is highlighted in red, as Marcy has, our Legislative Clerk has indicated on the first page. So there is some changes to these documents that you'll see in the methodology and the thinking of some of the points that are in there. And we have consulted legal advice as well on some of these. And so I'm open to any questions that you may have, and I'll try my best to answer them, as well as I'll defer to some of the committee members for their input as well. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Councillor Ryan?
Thank you very much, Mayor Dolan. Thank you to the committee for doing this work.
Excellent work.
Excellent work, sorry, Councillor Daly. I have questions, but I think if we're just accepting it for information, we're bringing them back, I think we can probably leave those questions for the further. But I just wanted to point out to Ms. McKinnon with regards to the documents, if we're taking out the authority, we need to do it throughout the whole thing. I noticed on several spots that the authority is still in there, and I can always point that out to Ms. McKinnon with regards to those changes, because I've circled them all. So I can pass that along to Ms. McKinnon, but I'm fine with continuing conversation when it comes back for discussion, if that's okay. And then we can move along. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I do believe we are aware of that at this point, and thank you for bringing that back up. Deputy Mayor? Anything further? Councillor Cummings?
Yeah, I think we were aware. I agree.
Good.
Yeah.
Councillor Cummings?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. So there was some wording issues, but I can pass that on to the legislative coordinator as required. I just have a couple of quick questions just for some clarification, because I didn't quite understand the methodology and the decision making, and it just kind of confused me there for a loop. If we look at page 63.3, there was some editing done there that takes away the ability for committees that have public at large members from being invested any sort of empowerment to make decisions on their own, which is the way it was worded before, that they were allowed to make decisions if empowered by council. In this particular iteration, that's been removed entirely. And now they can only make recommendations to council, which means that any committee that we ever form that has a citizen on it cannot be empowered to make a decision, only recommendations to council. So if we look back at when we used to have the MVP, MPC, sorry, I forgot the acronym, Municipal Planning Commission, MPC, they were an empowered committee to make decisions on our behalf. In all of the training we've had so far and every expert we've had in discussions, that's been a goal. A progression that we should be trying to achieve is to give empowerment to citizens of our town, and this change just takes it away. So I'm wondering if that was intentional, that we're purposely removing the ability for council to ever empower citizen committees or committees that have citizens to make decisions on their own that we've given them the power to do. It just seems kind of weird of a change.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Well, I see what you're getting at, but also when we appoint somebody to a board or a committee, that person that's sitting on that board or committee is there representing the town as well as that committee. And so they have to realize what hat they're wearing when they're on that committee. And it's going to be a decision of the committee or the board that comes back to a recommendation to the council. So it's not the one person making the decision to come back to council for a recommendation. Does that make sense?
Not at all, because this is about the section of the policy that this refers to is about appointing members at large to council committees, like MPC or anything else like that, or the Mountain View Power Committee that we have set. Right? If we ever want to empower those committees to make decisions on our behalf, rather than just providing opinion to us or as we've said in this red line, to make recommendations to council. If we want to empower those committees, this prevents us from doing it so long as there's a public member at large on the committee. Now, I get the whole that they're representing outside of our council committees, like say, like I'm on Mountain View Regional Waste Management Committee, it's my job to represent the town there. Absolutely. That's not what this is talking about at all, though. In the policy, this is talking about council appointing citizens to council committees. And in this case, we've no longer given them the power to make decisions. So it's tricky, and I'm not sure if that was your intent. It doesn't sound like it was your intent. But the wording to me makes it very clear that that's what the wording dictates as a requirement. So maybe that's something we need to redress and look at again to see that we're not actually doing that, or if we are doing that. And I may be wrong entirely about the process there, but it just seems to me that that's the way it is.
Okay, before I go to you, Council Ryan, CO Williams.
Thanks, Mayor Dahl. And to Councillor Cummings' point, I think I know what he's getting at, and I do believe I understand the intention. But perhaps a simple addition of a clause such as unless specified in the committee bylaw by council otherwise. MPC is a statutory committee, so that wouldn't really matter. But let's say if you want a future committee, such as the Mountain View Power Grant, to have a more robust decision-making capacity, every committee has to be created by bylaw. So perhaps in that bylaw, that's where council could grant them that authority. And perhaps a way around that is to just add a clause unless otherwise specified by committee bylaw, if that would be acceptable.
Sorry, absolutely. Just something in there that we can actually empower citizen-driven committees to make decisions if council chooses to do that.
Heather, did you want to go, or Deputy Mayor would like to respond to that, committee chair?
Yeah, I'm seeing what you're talking about, Councillor Cummings. But on the other hand, we also appoint those through our selection process here within council, those members. And so that's the appointing part. And then, so let's say, for instance, there's a committee that comes back and they decide on their own that we should paint everything blue in the town of Olds. That recommendation would come to council and we would have to decide whether we paint everything blue in town. We do not give them the authority to say, okay, we're going to paint everything blue in town. So I think what this is saying is that a lot of times we do get, even through the Mount View Power, we do get that information and those things that come to council for acceptance or for agreement through council. So I'm just, yeah, I agree with CAO Williams as well. Just to clarify it, I think that just that one statement would do it.
Thank you. We've got Councillor Ryan and then Councillor Walsh, who is a committee member.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I just want to respond to that and say there are boards that actually have the authority to go ahead and do whatever. Library board, for one thing. It doesn't come back and ask for, give council recommendations. It makes the decisions and they move on. I think I see what your point was with regards to having this worded, but I think the recommendation by CEO Williams will probably suffice in order to cover that. And just as a distinction, I think some of the things like the art committee or even Mountain View Power Committee that has funds that is provided by the town and or is going to use to purchase something or whatever, that recommendation needs to come back to council because it's our budget. Unless a committee already has its own budget and then they work within that budget, then those recommendations shouldn't have to come back to council. So I understand where you're coming from, Councillor Cummings, and I think just having it reworded might suffice. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh.
Yeah, I think the conversation's been covering it. And they are committees of council, so they're not making decisions on behalf of council. They are given terms of reference. They are giving the library board, they have an act, they follow their own. There's all kinds of limitations around what these members or public at large members have to adhere to. So I think that was the decisions on behalf of council. No, they don't get to make decisions on behalf of council. Recommendations come to council, and through the terms of reference or bylaw, we give them the ability to recommend or work within the community. That's fine, but I think a slight change to this wording would help a lot.
Thank you. So what I'm hearing is that unless otherwise specified by committee bylaw would be acceptable? Very good. Anything further? Councillor Cummings?
Just on a different note there, policy 107C, the recommendation to add point 13. I know this has been brought up in council meetings before for certain situations and stuff like that. And the very specific situation that's described in your notes, I'm a little, I just need some clarification, and maybe this can come from administration. When we are elected as officials for the town, by whatever bylaw we have in the past, has given us the authority to join Alberta municipalities as individuals. And my question is when we're at Alberta municipalities or as members of an association like Alberta municipalities, are we representing the town or ourselves? And it's a really interesting question because I'm a member of a society, the Society of Engineering Technicians and Technologists of BC. When Alberta Municipalities is a society of professionals. And I'm wondering if those are relatable in that when I represent or when I'm a member of a society, I'm there because I meet the requirements of the society. So when it comes to things like Alberta Municipalities or FCM or anything like that, these are societies for professional politicians such as us. Are we there representing the town? Or are we there representing ourselves because we are individually members of those societies? The town pays on our behalf, the individual's membership fee for that association. Just as if your employer, and I double-checked here in the town as part of our remuneration policy, any employee that's required to be a member of a society due to their position, like the planner, the CET, or such, the town pays those fees for those memberships, but they do not represent the town at those events. They are professionals, and it's a professional society. So if I can just, before we have any discussion on 107C and the way that's been worded, which I don't have a problem with, I'm just curious about our actual role in Alberta municipalities and FCM as societies. Do we represent ourselves, or are we representatives of the town? Or some mesh in there that makes it a little gray?
Councillor Ryan would like to speak.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I just want to let Councillor Cummings know that when we provide, I don't see it as a society in that way. So when the town purchases, our membership within Alberta Munis, it's a town. It's not they're not paying for each individual councillor and mayor. They're paying for the town membership, as far as I know. I sat on the Alberta Munis Infrastructure Committee just recently, and I represent the town when I'm at that meeting. I do not represent Heather Ryan at that meeting. So when I'm speaking, I speak on behalf of the town and our experiences. When they ask how we do things, I speak on behalf of our town. I talk to CEO Williams to make sure that I'm not speaking out of turn, and that I'm providing the most accurate information to the committee so that the committee can proceed with how they're forming their advocacy to the government. That's how it works. So you are actually representing the town, and all the members who are on that committee are representing their towns when they're on there. They're not individuals. I want to add that I do not have a problem with item number 13 in the way it's worded.
Thank you, I agree. Deputy Mayor Daley?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. And if you read in the wording, if you look at the wording on item 13 there, Councillor Cummings, it says that we're not making a decision whether you can be on that committee or of whatever. It just says you're doing a professional courtesy of letting your fellow councillors and mayor know that you are having these intentions of going on to a committee. We're not closing the door on anybody to participate in any of these external committees.
Councillor Cummings?
Thanks, and that's why I said right at the very beginning that I have no problems with the point being made. I just asked for some clarification from administration on that issue. So I appreciate your comments and your concerns and your opinion on how it works and how you believe it works. But the question was directed to the CAO, and I'm wondering if the CAO would be willing to answer it.
Yeah, I can try. So in your role on the respective commissions, for example, or the library, I believe that you're there representing that organization, trying to act in the best interest of that organization. Your role as a counselor is secondary. That's the only reason you got there. If we take Heather Ryan, Councillor Ryan's, excuse my impropriety, recent role as infrastructure committee member on Alberta municipalities. Obviously, she's appointed by the Alberta municipalities, but because she's a counselor, she's eligible for membership. I believe it's more of a hybrid, that she's there in service to that organization, and that she's not speaking, it's not Town of Old's business, but there is that crossover. So it's a bit of a different thing or expectation. It's always a gray area, though, because it's very difficult to take off a hat and remove a hat. So it is committee to committee based, but generally speaking, I would say you're in service to the committee that you're on. Now, there's gray areas in there, of course, but that's my take on it.
I would say that was the discussion we had around the table, and Councillor Walsh can leave a point if he wishes as well. Just as Councillor Ryan stated, you would not be on there if you were not an elected official. We are there because of that reason. Did you want to add anything further? Okay. Yeah, thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Would the committee like us to send any notes that we have on just structural issues to the legislative coordinator or to the chair?
I I'd like you to send
Yes,
them to the
please.
legislative clerk, and she will work with the chair. Thank you very much, Councillor Cummings. All right. I'm just going to have to go back. We need to make a yeah. Councillor Wilson made a motion, and now I'm calling the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much for your discussion, everyone. Now we're moving to page 82. '82 is with regards to the mid-sized town mayor's caucus terms of reference. This terms of reference from the mayor's caucus was approved by our councils on January 22nd and presented back to the mayor's caucus. And what we have are 3 amendments. And the 3 amendments start with, as you will see, item 2 has been changed to read not just the acronym. They've added mid-sized towns mayor's caucus. And then I'll note on number 9, at our last meeting, it was unanimous that all the mayors would review the confidentiality clause and wanted to bring back to our councils, as well as number 10, the deletion as after MTMC and communication, this could also be added, was deleted. And we are all taking this back to our respective councilors, our councils, and will once again, once we get permission, we will have the amendments passed. May I get a motion then on the floor? Deputy Mayor Daley.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that council approve the mid-sized town's mayor caucus terms of reference as presented.
The amendments, thank you very much. I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? Oh, sorry. Quite, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I do have a concern with the confidentiality. And that is, I'm fine with having the confidentiality so that there's discussion and open discussion amongst the mayors. I'm not fine with not sharing that information because, once you've made a decision, I think you need to share that information publicly. So in the fact that the way it's worded, I'm not sure I agree with how it's worded. I do think that because we are paying, the town of Olds is paying for membership in it and for you to be there, that it needs to be, we need to receive a report as to what's happening. And having this confidentiality does not show that in here, as far as I'm concerned, how it's worded. So while I agree that it probably should not be an open meeting to the public, I do believe that we should be behooving to report to the public, or at least to this council and to the public.
Yes, I understand what you're saying, and you are correct that there are purposes that this is done, but I'd have to bring it back to the committee because I'm not allowed to speak on behalf of the chair. However, speaking, we will report back, but there are confidentiality items that do have to be held confidential. But as a mayor, I will be bringing reports back to council, and I have. However, speaking, I will take that comment back to ask if they could be brought back within a regular meeting. Yes, Legislative Clerk.
Thank you. Through the chair, Councillor Walsh and Councillor Daley and Mayor Dahl, you guys had this discussion regarding our code of conduct, and we did speak to the lawyers about bringing closed information from one session to another, and we've added this to the code of conduct that I have on your screen, right? So the information has to be approved, as we understand it, by that agency to be released from closed to closed, right? Not, you can't just expect in a report is what I'm, okay.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Marcy. Councillor Ryan?
Yeah, and I totally agree. If there's something that discussed in closed session or during the event that is going to be confidential, and you need to keep it confidential, then that's one thing. But there are going to be times where you're talking about something that is general, that it can be shared, and I think that by having that clause in there about the confidentiality, it doesn't show that you can report at any time to the public. And if you're going to include it in your report, Mayor, I agree that that should be where it is, and then you can just ask the committee at the point, I'm going to put this in my report, or however you want to say it. But I think by saying that everything is going to be confidential, it shouldn't be, and it just needs to have some clarification, and perhaps you could just pass on that information from a concern from from one of your council members. Thanks.
Thank you. That's why we brought it back to our council to get feedback. Councillor Walsh, did you have a point?
No, reading through the whole document, when you look at point 3, the objectives, that's what they intend to do. But I understand doing it in the wording is probably wrong for closed session. It's just, yeah, it's not in public view in their discussions, but what the objectives are will be made public. And there's quite a few. We'll create strategies, respond, advocate for things, and the best practice for sharing, developing solutions. So, yeah, that's what the intent of this organization is. So I don't see everything. I don't think it's a secret society.
Thank you for sharing that, but you're correct. Councillor Cummings?
Thank you. So, thanks, Councillor Ryan, for bringing this point up, because I'm kind of really confused about this, since we are a group of municipalities all governed by the MGA, getting together to have a conversation about municipal affairs, and in such a glaring violation of the MGA, you put in this confidentiality group. Meetings can only be closed if they fall under FOIP. So, and that's the MGA guidelines, right, or the rules that we have. How far away from the MGA can a municipal organization go? This is, in my mind, way too far to assume that every single thing your organization is going to, or this organization is going to discuss is covered under FOIP, like when is our next meeting going to be, which absolutely cannot be in a closed session, right, in our rules. So I'm just confused as how a group of mayors who all abide by the MGA and our rules can literally put something in here and say every single decision we make and every single conversation we have will fall under FOIP. I don't see how that can legitimately be put into a terms of reference of an organization of municipally elected officials. It just seems contrary to our guidelines as municipally elected officials to do something that is so against our own guidelines and our own policies and our own laws, to put something like this into one of our terms of references of a committee of our membership.
Thank you for your conversation, Councillor Cummings, and Councillor Walsh was very correct with the fact that I believe the wording needs to be revisited as well. So I will take this back to the executive caucus that led this and brought this back to us, which is the chair, vice chair, and executive board members. Thank you very much. Good comments. We have a motion on the floor from Councillor Daly right now, and thank you once again for your comments, and I'll take that back to the membership executive team. Yes, Councillor Ryan?
Sorry to interrupt Mayor Dahl, but the motion says that we approve the terms of reference, and I'm not sure if we do at this point approve the terms of reference, or at least two councillors.
Vote
So
against
I
it.
guess we could vote on it and then, yeah.
That's fair. Yeah, there's a motion on the floor, and we certainly will leave it the way you like. Why don't we do, I would ask Mayor Daly if you're willing to withdraw your motion.
I am, Mayor Dahl. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay. Would you like to put another motion on the floor to receive for information, and then I could go back and speak to the executive?
Yeah, I'll do that. I move that council receive the mid-sized town mayor caucus terms of reference for information, and that the terms of reference be returned to the caucus for reconsideration.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Daley. I will now call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried, and thank you very much for your input. Item 5C, please, page 87. This is the Intermunicipal Cooperation Committee Agreement Extension. C.O. Williams?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. So for the ICC agreement between ourselves and Mountain View County, it is due to expire at the end of this year. Within that agreement, there's some pretty specific dates for renegotiation. And to be frank, it's been a busy 2024 for everyone, and we need a bit more time to hammer out the details. So this recommendation is going forward to Mountain View County Council on Wednesday. And all indications are they will pass a similar motion, giving both the town and county until December 31st of this year to renegotiate that agreement. There's nothing significant to report. It's just really much a capacity and time issue. And if December 31st is not achievable, then we have both agreed in principle, pending council approval, to then delay it until Municipal Affairs updates their ICF regulation, which is now 15 months overdue, but has been semi-promised by spring of 2025. I haven't taken any questions, but more to just give administration a bit more time on both sides.
Thank you. It looks like Councillor Ryan's got a question.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, through you to CEO Williams. I just have a question with regards to the latter part of what you just said with regards to municipal affairs. They've been promising to get this out, and it hasn't. And I'm just worried about them pushing it further to summer or winter, and then going to 2026. That would be just ridiculous. I think we need to have an actual, like, I'm fine with extending it to the end of the year, but then say, if that's not doable, the ultimate deadline would be X day, June 1st or whatever it is of 2025. Only because I'm just concerned about how municipal affairs, they churn slowly sometimes, and I would hate to have this fall off our radar and not get the work done that needs to be done. Thanks.
You.
And very good point, Councillor Ryan. And I think if Municipal Affairs backtracks on their April 2025 date, ICC will have to consider it again and make another recommendation with the election pending and all of that, and when we could finalize that renegotiation. But we are hoping December 31st will be the day, or prior to that date.
Yeah, we did have that discussion. Thank you very much for bringing it up one more time. All right, I'd ask for a motion, please. Oh, thank you. Deputy Mayor Daley.
I have a comment, Mayor Dahl, and it's just that with our changing times and just with the time that's elapsed, that's already taken place throughout this agreement between us and Mountain View County, that I just feel that the updating and the modernization and the getting the prices and the fees and everything up to date is a hindrance to the town of Olds right now, and I just have that concern, and I'm happy to vote in favor of this today, but after December 31st, I'm not sure whether I'm going to be that agreeable. So that's just my comment. So thank you.
Fair. Those are fair comments. There was that. I can assure you that discussion was on the table this morning. Thank you for sharing that. Who would like to make that motion then? Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. And just my brief comment before I make the motion. At our meeting this morning, I think the main thing that we all walked away from is to continue the dialogue. And so there's certainly ongoing efforts to make this thing doable and executed as soon as we can. So, and with that, I would make the motion that council agrees to extend the Intermunicipal Collaboration Framework ICF review and renegotiation window between Mountain View County and the town of Olds to December 31, 2024. And if agreement is not reached, the ICF will renew until Municipal Affairs passes new ICF regulations or as per Schedule 1 of the Intermunicipal Cooperation Committee ICC Master Agreement.
Very much, Councillor Wilson. I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much for your information. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. Those opposed? Thank you. That's carried. Thank you. Moving down now to the development permits, page 88. Oh, very good. We have Mr. Sloan coming back. Municipal Land Use Planner.
Thank you again. The first development permit I have for you today is for a permanent commercial patio at 4919 49th Avenue. The business, the applicant has applied for and received approval of a temporary patio every year since 2020, since 2021, and is seeking to get a permanent patio approved so that they don't have to go through the application process every year. And in fact, for the last number of years, while the patio has been disused over the winter, it has not been deconstructed. It has remained in place, and the town has not received any complaints about the patio in the 4 years that it's been there. The reason that this application is at council is for a variance to parking. The patio adds an additional 40 seats to the restaurant while being located in what has been the parking lot of the restaurant. And it's a mixed-use property where there are 6 one-bedroom residential units as well. The restaurant is there, the restaurant and bar, and then there are 2 additional commercial storage units, commercial units or storage units on site. The patio itself represents an increase in parking requirement of 5 stalls. The other uses have been there. The building, I believe, dates to 1943. It's from the 1940s, and the building's been there since then with the other mix of uses in various capacities since that time. The parking variance requested, 1949. The parking variance requested is for a variance of 42%. The rationale for approving this patio and the variance is represented on your screen, actually on page 90, where the property is kitty corner from a town-owned parking lot that is shown in green here. Not only does the parking lot supply or meet a large degree of the parking demand in the area, the building is in the C1 district where, again, that cash in lieu for newer developments would come into play. Generally, cash in lieu isn't sought for existing buildings that there's no redevelopment really happening on the site. As well, the particular business that uses the patio opens at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and the surrounding businesses generally close at 4 or 5, and that allows for a smoother transition from one business's hours to the rest or from the rest. And again, in the past 4 years, we've received no complaints or anything about the parking in this area. Administration supports this application and recommends that council approve development permit 24-40 as presented, subject to the conditions listed in the attached draft permit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd ask council at this time if they have any questions for Mr. Sloan. Deputy Mayor Daley.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Through you to Development Officer Sloan. What they're asking for here is to have the patio be maintained or not torn down for the remainder of the year after whatever the set date was. And so their reasoning behind that, I'm curious to find out what that is. And if it is a loss of 5 parking spots, could they not just compress the patio for the colder months and have the 5 spots on site?
Thank you for your questions. The reasoning is twofold, mainly in one, the application process every year. It does come with a fee, the temporary patios do, and some administrative time to get that approved. We have, that used to be a thing that had to go to MPC, and administration has taken control of the approval authority for temporary patios. But it is still a time for the application. Not alternatively, but additionally to that, the applicant wants to do more landscaping around this patio. They want to make the surrounding fence permanent in the ground and then put trees around the outside of it, so that the patio, for their customers on the patio, they're surrounded more by landscaping than by the parking lot and the road next to it. They don't want to commit that investment, even though the patio has remained there over the winters the last few years. They don't want to commit that money with the possibility that the next year's approval might not come, and maybe it's refused for some reason. They want to get the permanent approval so that they feel more comfortable investing that money into the space. Regarding the 5 spaces, it's not a loss of 5 spaces on the site. I forget what it is, how many stalls were in that space, but it's an increase of 5 spaces to the overall parking requirement under the land use bylaw. I believe there are 13 stalls on the site. On page, let me see. On page 93, there's a floor plan of all the units. So there's parking around the parking lot still, and between the patio and the lane, because they actually have made it smaller than it was originally, the temporary one. But also, Shop C is not a commercial or storage use, that is a garage, so that adds a couple of parking spaces as well. So they do have 13, I believe, parking stalls on site. Again, that's mostly or entirely now at this point for the building tenants and owner. The customers for this typically would use street parking or the town parking lot across the way.
Elemental, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Supplemental then is, if we approve this, then are the other people that are applying for temporary patios also going to want this as well? Or does this open the door for them?
Thank you. We have seen some, when we first introduced temporary patios, we have seen 2 of those businesses apply and get approval for permanent patios, either later that same year in the first year or then the second year they did. This is one business that's been going the temporary route since then, but others have done this already and gone to permanent patios.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the familiarity here, this patio, like Kyle said, has been there consistently, and those parking spots have not been available consistently since 2021. And as he said, there's been no complaints at all to the town about parking in that corner. I agree, especially kitty corner to our own municipal parking spot. I did have a question in my notes here about the cash in lieu process for established business rather than a new development process. But you answered that question for me, so that's kind of moot now at this point. So considering that, in my mind, considering that we've never had a complaint and those 5 parking spots have been gone since day one, and it is a variance of 9 parking spots that generally haven't been there since this 2021 issue, to me this is like one of those retroactive, it's already been done, And at this point, it's been proven to not be a hindrance into the community because it's been there for 3 years and hasn't had or generated any complaints. I'm in full support of this particular issue.
Thank you. I recall the owner of this coming to the town of Olds, asking for beautification of it for years and years and years. So this sounds like, I would understand why he would want approval first before spending a bunch of money to beautify the property. But I would approve this as well. Yes, Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Through you to the officer. Just a very brief, quick question. So temporary patio now, so restricted months of operation. If and when this is approved, in theory, weather dependent, it becomes a 12-month operation, correct? Okay.
That's correct. Currently, our temporary patio permits generally are approved from whenever the application comes in until October 31st. This being Alberta, we do get patio weather outside of those months as well, which is another reason people apply for the permanent patio.
Thank you. Nothing further then at this point? Very good. I would ask for a motion, please. Councillor Walsh, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the council approve development of permit 24-040 as presented and subject to the conditions listed in the attached draft permit.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. I will now call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We'll move down to item 5E now, page 95, accessory structure. Go ahead, Mr. Sloan.
Thanks again. This development permit application is for a solar installation on the property of 4102 50th Avenue. The reason this application is at council is that this property is zoned urban reserve. Administration does not have the authority to approve any development permit in the urban reserve district. Unlike most solar installation applications that the town receives, which are rooftop installations, this one is detached with a solar array in the rear yard. The urban reserve district doesn't really outline many land use bylaw regulations. It is a district intended to become another district in the future at some point. This particular parcel is adjacent to and most alike the R5 district for country residential. It's a little over 2 acres. It's a large residential parcel. And so the chart on page 95 on this and on the screen shows how this application aligns with the regulations in the R5 district. It meets all the regulations except for the side yard, where the R5 district requires a minimum side yard of 4.5 meters rather than standard 1.5 meters. And the proposed solar installation would be 10 feet or 3.05 meters from the side yard. That is at the rear of the property. Administration does not think it negatively impacts the use and enjoyment of adjacent parcels, and does recommend approval that council approve development permit application 24-116 as presented, subject to the conditions listed in the attached draft permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Does council have questions? Councillor Cummings?
Thank you. Just one housekeeping thing there on the actual permit. I'm sorry, I'm scrolling down as fast as I can here. It does say rooftop. Under proposal it says rooftop solar installation. I know you've already commented that isn't, and you can physically see, because it's already built, that it is not a rooftop application. One other quick question there. Lots of times we talk about these urban development areas as becoming something else. At this stage of the game, with the development that's there and surrounding it, in your opinion, would it not be more advantageous to again change it to R5?
Yes, I believe it would be. At this point, we haven't received an application to do so, and we don't need to receive an application to do so. However, with our land use bylaw review coming up, there may be more instances like this where we see opportunities to do spot rezonings, like in this case, to do this, rezone this to R5 as part of that whole, rather than dealing with every property individually as it comes up. So at this point, it hasn't happened largely because we would like to see it rezoned to R5, tied in with another bylaw amendment that we're already working on, just to be more efficient.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and again through you to the development officer. So just to confirm, looking at the paperwork, the accompanying paperwork, so this is already built, but there were no objections from all the solicitations that we sent out, correct?
That's correct. One neighboring landowner did comment on that, but did say that they were not opposed to it.
Okay.
As with any development permit, it's expressed to the applicant that any risk that is done before approval, and in fact before the effective date, after, if this is approved, there's an appeal period for 21 days, and any work that's done before that appeal period is over is done at their own risk.
Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, and just somewhat of a supplement, and should this be approved, make sure we include a Mountain View Power brochure with our communication, so.
Thank you. Before I get to Councillor Cummings, I would just like to respond that I applaud this application and this owner for taking on the responsibility of trying to preserve energy with solar installations and reduce costs. It's a hard time for everybody. Councillor Cummings?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And this is just more of a general professional question related to recent development permits and stuff like that. Kyle, are you seeing more and more, because this is 2 development permits in a row where the work has actually been done? If we include the patio not being broken down as it's supposed to be every year, and this development being constructed prior to, and of course we've seen lots of development. Are you seeing this? I know about the same sort of situation with our just going ahead and doing those, and then maybe follow up with the paperwork later or attention later. So are you seeing this as a trend, or is it start looking at the sea of trend?
I don't see there are year where we do see this with a permit. Quite often, the development is installed and then they realize it. There are certain cases where, in other situations, they're not required. This one, for instance, is not required a building permit. And so there are cases where it's not clear what does and doesn't require a development permit. Or in some cases, it's an opportunity people see to fit into the narrow construction season and then start the process for applications, and then that takes longer than they expect. But overall, no, I don't see it as a trend where it's more and more that people are doing things without permission, but it does come up on occasion.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion at this point. Councillor Cummings?
I move that council approve development permit application DP 24-116 is presented, subject to the conditions listed in the attached draft development permit.
Thank you. I'll now call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And finally, item 5F, page 105. Mr. Sloan?
Thank you. This development permit application is for a commercial daycare facility. It's actually a new location for the Boys and Girls Club of Oldson area at 6610 57th Street. This is the Holy Trinity Catholic School. Being an accessory use in that school, which is what the application is in front of to neighboring landowners and any the the daycare intends to operate before and after school. So the facilities that are already on site, administration feels like that accommodates this use separately than the school use, and the recommendation is that council approved at 24.36 as presented.
Bailey? I would have that the teachers deserve some support. Go ahead.
I'd like to move that council approve development application DP-136 as subject to draft development.
Thank you. I will now call for the vote. Oh, okay. Sorry.
Discussion?
Yes.
Ask the question, is this daycare students of the Trinity School, do you know, or is this a before and after daycare for the school, or is it open to all citizens?
Thank you for the question. I don't have a concrete answer. I do believe it's open to all, though not just students.
Answer for you, see.
It's open, so the facility, so until anyone gets in still capacity.
Yeah, the boys and girls are doing an excellent job of staying mobile. Councillor,
I know this piece of information is not required. Where know if they're intending another center or a creation of one or four existing centers.
Thank you. I believe it's an
any further questions? I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for the afternoon. Page 111, please, in your agenda. And we have some correspondence and information. I'll get a motion on the floor first, please. Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that correspondence and information report ending August 26, 2024 be received for information.
Thank you. Does Councillor wish to speak to any of these before I call for the vote? Councillor Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I would like to speak to the letter that we received from the RCMP with regards to all these costs. And I'm just wondering, at the end, there is a signature required. And I just want to find out from our CAO if we could possibly know how tied we are if we and when we sign this thing. My concern is that we're looking at this continual increase in costs. Of course, everything increases in cost, but going up $750,000, $750,000 within 5 years, it's significant. And I want to know what kind of input we have in the costs that are escalating substantially, and whether or not, what happens if we don't sign it, or what happens if we do sign it. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. I don't want to speculate what happens if we don't sign it, but I guess to answer in a way that would put your mind at ease, but then answer a second way that will do the exact opposite. This multi-year financial plan is based on the existing budget forecast, so no increases unless what we were already expecting will necessarily be initiated by signing this. That's all within the existing cost structure. But to the input side, the only control we have over escalating costs is whether we put additional officers on our payroll. RCMP officers, municipal officers, which, if you recall, I believe the meeting just before we broke, they are projecting within 5 years 2 additional officers for the Olds detachment. That's essentially our decision. We can decline that and save it. However, even without those officers projected, we are still looking at a $500,000 projected increase over the next 5 years. We have no control over that. So, say if we then try to push back or not sign documents, it really doesn't matter in the long term, honestly, with you. Sorry, I know. I more bad than good. I did set that up wrong, but
That was what I was afraid of, though, so, but thank you for saying that.
Yes, and I just wanted to note with that answer on page 118, that it is, they do note, understanding that approved municipal budgets are not available at the time, and municipal and federal budget processes and timelines do not normally align anyways. So what CEO Williams shared is pretty right on. Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. So, yeah, just further to that line of questioning and through you to the CAO, I'm just wondering, and I believe this ties in, Director Linderman had presented this at our July 2nd meeting, or given us a first heads up around the cost increase. And I agree, 800,000 even spread over 5 years. I think my words at the time were it's a bitter pill to swallow, and sounds like we don't have much leeway and latitude, but we always also as well talk about an advocacy role. We just came back from CFM, or the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, sorry. There they talked about a revised municipal growth framework. Justin Trudeau said he's more than willing to meet at the table and talk with the municipalities and FCM. From an advocacy perspective, what options do we have, if any?
I know I was born a pessimist, so I think we have limited to no options. The feds aren't going to move on this. They have no skin in the game when it comes to municipalities because they have no relationship with municipalities. If advocacy was council's preference, it is not on council's advocacy list right now. The Minister of Public Safety, Minister Ellis, right now would be the most appropriate means to advocate, and that is because the province does share a portion of policing costs for the RCMP. And if the municipalities were to have any traction, we just have a much better chance of success with the province as opposed to with the feds. But both options are far from likely to be productive. So it's something that I believe we're going to be faced with regardless of how we advocate, but it doesn't say we shouldn't. But it's a train that we could see coming at least, as opposed to other trains we've been hit by.
Well, actually, that's fine. Thank you.
Councillor Cummings?
Thanks. I just have one quick question and one comment. So I believe it's in Alberta, it's 15,000 population where we transfer to 100% cost burden of policing. Sorry? 90-10 at 15,000? I think we're 70-30. 70-30 now, I know that's right. And the comment I wanted to make is we just had our policing report done, and in there it did mention that, oddly enough, we're extremely under-policed with good results. So our detachment's doing something good for the money. The average in Canada, though, is 22.1 police officers for 10,000 people. That's twice the number of police officers that we have in Olds. And with our policing contract, with contract policing, like Brent said, we've got almost no say except for the number of officers we choose to hire in our region. And that's the only power we have. And we're at half of what our comparators would have in the entire country for policing. So I would expect more and more and more costs going to policing over the years, something that we have to prepare for and budget for moving into the future, not just this $500,000 more over 5 years, but a significantly larger increase, especially with their retroactive pay contract negotiations again happening. that we're going to see a large retroactive pay increase moving forward.
Councillor Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Can I move on to another piece of correspondence now?
Thank you.
Thank you. I just had a question with regards to 145, page 145, in the letter from Minister McIver, and that was with regards to the amount of money that we're getting through this BF. And I'm just wondering if, CEO Williams, do you know, off the top of your head, what our allocation was for 2023 through this? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Not off the top of my head. If you give me 3 minutes, I could probably find it. No? Well then, show me up.
No, well, no, that's, no. Far be it for me to do that. I did, because it was part of there's the link there, the Open Alberta CA Publications, and I had a little bit of spare time, and if I read it right, the CCBF for Olds in 2023 was $574,933, and for 2024, it's $586, $586,489.
I was going to say that.
So a slight increase then.
Slight, I would call it flat, but you could say a slight increase. Sorry.
Well, thank you for collaborating on that, gentlemen. Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
CAO can just send me a portion of his salary, and then we'll call it square. So, no, I will take us back to the RCMP and Councillor Cummings' comments, and as I said, with Councillor Heather Ryan and myself, it just, again, for our thousands of viewers that are watching live or that will podcast this later, like, it just points to the challenge that we have in terms of funding our infrastructure. We know what's going on. All you have to do is drive around our streets to see the digging and excavation that's going on relative to our in-ground, underground water and sewage. They talked to the newly elected president of FCM on the radio just in the last week, and municipalities supposedly own 60% of the infrastructure, and we get like 8 to 10 cents of the dollar of every tax dollar collected. So it's just compounding, and I've said this before, this is like a perfect storm that's happening. You got a $800,000 minimum forecasted RCMP increase, which again, we can all do the math, so that's for every 100,000, that's a 1% increase in tax rates, on top of all of our other challenges that we have. So the perfect storm just continues to grow and grow, which is why I drew the question back to advocacy and our good friend, the Prime Minister. We do need a new municipal growth framework soon.
I'll have to speak closer to our mics. The gallery can't quite hear us. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much, folks. We have a motion on the floor from Councillor Walsh, so we'll move along. And all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Page 1, we are now going down to page 147, which is our reports from council. I will also get a motion on the floor before I go further on this. Councillor Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that the reports from council, boards, committees, and commissions ending August 26, 2024 be received for information.
Thank you. And reports are in the agenda from the mayor, Councillors Blatz, Daly, Ryan, and Wilson. So I'll call upon Councillor Walsh and Councillor Cummings for a report.
Thank you, Mayor. It's been a summer where I had the opportunity to enjoy not a lot of meetings. The only one that I attended was August 15th, was Parkland Regional Library Advocacy Committee meeting, basically talking about what councils want to see when Parkland presents to them, whether it's a structure provincially or whether it's an internal Parkland report. So it's undecided yet, but it's going forward, and that's all I have.
Councillor Cummings?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So since our last meeting in July the 8th, I've been working with the Red Deer River Municipal Users Group, one of our subcommittees, on developing a new strategic plan or to update our existing strategic plan. And that was really because of a win that we did there with granting some funds, or getting some grant funds from the province of Alberta, committing to an analysis being done on a new reservoir on the Red Deer River, and that's $5 million over the 2 years. So we've been advocating for that for such a long time that it took pretty much our entire strategic plan at the time. So now we're kind of sitting there going, what do we do next? So that plan has been put together, and we'll present that next month to the committee, or to the group itself, and then bring that forward to councils for review. We did host our Mountain View Regional Waste Management Commission for the first time here in the town of Olds, as our regular facility is out of commission at the county. So thank the town. I'd like to thank the town for letting us use their facilities. And again, I'd like to congratulate Olds College for putting on a fantastic expo this year again. I was there for both days and visited as many of the educational sessions as I could. A big highlight for me was hearing the extraordinary personal stories told by the young farmers of Alberta. And I found it fascinating that young farmers of Alberta is up to 50, I think 45 years of age. That's a young farmer. That's kind of scary. But that's it for me.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Ryan, you'd like to bring something forward from your report?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Dahl. As we had spoken about earlier in this council meeting, actually, with regards to letting council be aware of, applying for another committee. And as I sat on the infrastructure committee, these committees for Alberta municipalities work that you are appointed for 1 year, and it dissolves before the conference. At our committee, our chair had asked for all members to reapply because we have been doing some significant work and some things that are going forward that are still need to be worked on, that I think that they were interested in having that continuousness of the board. So I would like to resubmit my name. I don't know if you want to require a motion today to allow that to happen, or just allow just me providing the information to the council and saying I will appreciate the support of council to resubmit my name for that committee.
Thank you very much. I do believe this discussion's come to our table in the past, and we agreed that just the information sharing with council and the public, and thank you for doing that. Will they still leave applications open for other members?
Yes, absolutely. It's
Okay.
open for anybody to apply, any elected official to apply for those committees still.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing that information and that update that you're reapplying. Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I'll be very brief. It's in my report, but I will just reemphasize, September 17th, 18th, and 19th, Community Futures is having their Alberta Conference, so I will be attending that as a board member, September 17th, 18th, and 19th. Thanks.
Wonderful. Where are you going?
Booming town of Red Deer.
It is a booming town. Good for you. Thank you for sharing. Anything further? We have a motion on the floor from Councillor Ryan. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That's carried. CAO Williams, it's your floor.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I have just 3 things for open session, along with what's on the screen. Not too much since July 9th. A couple things. One thing has been done, the QR code for the retail gap analysis, which I believe we are getting a fairly favorable response on. And then the update clarification on the OCAO health and safety reports, which I'll bring forward in a slightly revised format come my next quarterly update. Was there a wrap in there too, Marcy? No? Okay, well. So, okay. Wow, that's small. So, that works. Thank you. So, a bit of a new format, presentation format, given that we have switched our back end of reporter problem into our citywide software, so it's producing more options. So we decided to try the ever famous pie graph out to see if that woos you anymore. But for July itself, road issues, not unsurprisingly, have been number 1 with 15 complaints, and then spread evenly between sidewalks, parks, utilities, and other. So obviously our larger complaints, which will segue into my first point, have been around the road conditions, primarily with utility digs, 61st Avenue and 63rd Avenue being examples where we're getting no shortage of complaints on. For 2024, we're approaching 30 water main and or sanitary infiltration identifications and repairs. I think we've repaired somewhere in the 24 number, with 6 or 7 left to do. That's by far a record, largely because we're actively seeking them out. There's no shortage of underground challenges we're trying to find and then rectify, and they're taking time. You also see that as part of this, not only are we is a company called Thorough under contract to provide sanitary cammering for our entire 85-ish kilometers of sanitary pipe in the ground, we're also conducting pressure testing, which will become from every residence in town. And that's essentially a process where we go to an outdoor tap with our pressure device, turn on the tap, and see what the PSI is. Generally, things below, I believe it is 18 PSI, are flagged for further investigation, and that's when we will contact the homeowner to do a bit more locating and valve monitoring on the property. But we hope to get approximately 3,500 residences completed by the end of the year, which is no small feat. The asphalt repairs, though, these are contractor-led, just because of the size and scale. We don't have a great in-house means to do that size of repairs. It's slated for mid-September to begin on the 50 or so utility digs we have around town, and that's probably a low number. We have delayed a little bit because we have, unfortunately, more digging to do, as mentioned before, so we want to make sure we're able to accomplish as many repairs as possible. So we do apologize for the frustration, but this is essential. The second piece, Alberta Municipalities, happens at the end of this month. We have administration has requests on behalf of council meetings with ministers of environment, infrastructure, municipal affairs, and health. The confirmation has come back from health that they'll be having regional sessions based on the current AHS zones. So we're in central zone. So time and a place for that meeting with all those municipalities together with the minister will be announced shortly. And we're still waiting on confirmation from the other ministries. But as mentioned, citywide, which is the new pie chart you were so impressed by just a moment ago. Once we have staff trained up and our work order system fully underway, because we're at least halfway there based on my high-level perusal of it on a daily basis, we'll do a demo for council about how it works, the back end of report a problem, and plus what that work order system looks like, and then help that tie into our larger asset management goals and how it does play a role, a valuable role, even though it does take a while to introduce and integrate a new system, certainly software system. I think that's all I have for open session, Mayor Dahl, but happy to take any questions on these items or if there's other things you're curious about after a long absence from this chair.
Thank you very much, and I also would like to congratulate you on your completion of council items. Well done. Thank you very much for that. There are some questions. I'll just get the deputy mayor to take those questions at this time. I just have to take a leave for a moment. It's been a long meeting.
Okay. Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. 2 quick questions. Kind of related to each other, not kind of, they are related to each other. So in the new work order system, can we add videos and pictures to the work order? I'm assuming you can, since that's been around for
Yes.
a while. Okay. Is it possible for the town to create some sort of information product, a visual information product with some of these great videos and pictures you've been sending us of the dig sites and the water leaks, especially the most recent one on 51st showing the incredible amount of water that's getting in there? Because the conversation I'm having with people is mostly about the gravel patches all throughout town. They don't realize the significance of why they're there. And if we could show them why it's there, and with these great pictures, like at the Silver Links repair that was done and the amount of infiltration that we were getting there. That might be an easier product for us to sell the idea that we are digging up the town and why we're doing that. Because that's the term I hear a lot. We're just digging up the town for shits and giggles.
Fair point. And I think we have to report this information probably, certainly annually in our annual report, but if council wishes to have a more specific or more robust update to citizens along the sanitary and water repair side, for sure. And I know my somber voice just assumes everything's sad and dreary, but this is also a really good news story, that these leaks haven't just started, they've been years, sometimes decades in existence. So us being able to find them and rectify is positive. Now, it doesn't always look that way when you're driving over multiple gravel patches and you're hearing me talk about water loss, but yeah, I think as long as we can find a way to frame it properly, because it's easy to lose confidence in our infrastructure, which is in fact improving based on all the holes in the road. I would agree with you. I'll try to.
Well, exactly.
something together.
And a picture says 1,000 words, and I think people understand what they're seeing a lot better than us just saying, hey, we're fixing some leaks. If they see the buckets of water coming in on 51st Street Sanitary, they'll go, holy shit, that's, and pardon my language, but they'll be a bit more understanding of the dramatic nature of the costs that are going towards this, even if it's just a social media picture. I mean, you have the professionals in media that can come up with a good idea.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Cummings. On to Heather Ryan. Sorry, Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Daley. Yes, so it's kind of similar, not the same kind of thing, but similar topic in the fact that we have all of these utility digs. CEO Williams, I'm just concerned about the paving that you were talking about. With these utility digs, are you concerned at all with regards to paving over top and then having to go back in? That has, when I've been talking to people in town, I've been saying, we've dug it up because we've had to fix the infrastructure underneath, and there's no point really in trying to pave over top if we have to go back to the same spot. Is there that a concern? Would we be holding off on some locations, especially on 61st? I know we've got a lot of digs along there. I think there's like 4 or 5 even. Are we going to have to go back in there? And I would worry that we'd be spending money paving and then having to go back again next spring and dig it up again. So what's your thoughts on that?
It's always a risk. Generally speaking, like let's take 63rd for example, most of those digs are for service connections, so what connects the house to the main. We're confident in the integrity of our repairs there, so the risk is low. But what you see in the middle of the road, what main digs, that's the problem, because you never really find it on your first dig. They're very hard to locate. However, even though there's a risk we have to spend what might be $10,000 a patch, maybe $5,000 a patch, there's also a risk in not paving it financially, because asphalt's not just good for driving, it's good as a water mechanism to prevent seepage, because obviously if there's a hole in the ground, chances are under that hole, or gravel patch in the ground, chances are under that patch there is infrastructure that's compromised. So water can permeate very easily through gravel as opposed to asphalt. So there is that risk there. But I would say the repairs we've been doing have been good. Luckily, very few main issues, maybe one in this entire thing. Service connections have been by far the primary issue. So.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that answer. I know that in the city of Calgary, that I've personally seen them dig up a road year after year after year, going back and fixing the same thing over and over again. And obviously, you don't want to have to do that. So hopefully we've got a good handle on which ones we should be patching, and I appreciate you saying that.
Thank you for that. On to Councillor Wilson, and then I'll turn it back over to Mayor Dahl.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and again, through you or the Mayor to the CEO, just 1 or 2 questions. One is, and I will trump your somberness with the dose of reality. We are probably days or maybe weeks away from snow. I assume paving will be weather dependent. And how do we prioritize? And it's great news for our citizens to know that there is coming the repaving over the gravel. And how will we prioritize? Will it be the first dig, first paved, or last dug, first paved?
Good question. And generally, we will prioritize, and Director Page is better to answer this than me, but I'd say I believe we will prioritize based on I'll call it the traffic volume of the road. So if you know in our stone clearance, we have purple and red. Those are uptown and high traffic roads. 54th Street, for instance, given that it's a very frequent road for me, it makes me pretty angry every time I drive over those patches personally. So I will make sure those are the first ones done, if nothing else for my own sanity. But no, in all seriousness, we will prioritize largely based on the traffic volume of the road. So arterials. Moisture, you can't pave in moisture, but generally you can get asphalt down until it's good -5. It's not September, October are still good paving months. So no, it's hot mix. It'll be, and that's why we don't, outside the IR paver, we don't have a hot mix ready solution for such a large area. So that's why we depend on contractors to do it.
Good. Was that all the questions for our CEO? I'd like a motion, please, to accept his report for information. Councillor Walsh?
Thank you. I move that the Chief Administrative Officer report be accepted for information.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much, everyone, for your patience with us today. We will be going and moving into closed. Thank you, gallery members, for being here with us. For those of you joining us via live streaming, the meeting stream will be replaced by a graphic while council is in a closed session. When the graphic is removed, that will indicate that the meeting is ready to reconvene. I would then ask for a motion, please, reminding you that we have 4 items. Item 1, FOIP, OFL. Item 2, FOIP, real estate. Item 3, FOIP, public at large appointment. And item 4, our SRD update, section 16. Now I'd like a motion to move into closed at 3:39. Councillor Cummings?
Sorry, it's not up on my screen, so I don't know what to say. I move that council move into a closed session for item number 1, FOIP section 16, disclosure harmful to business interests of a third party for an OFL limited update. Item 2, okay, did I not say 16? Oh, from the next one, thank you. FOIP section 16, disclosure harmful to business interests of a third party for a real estate update. Item number 3, FOIP section 16, disclosure 17, thank you, disclosure harmful to personal privacy with public large appointments. And item number 4, brought under FOIP section 16, an update from the SRD from Councillor Ryan. With all those in attendance, thank you, at 3:40 p.m.
Thank you, Councillor Cummings. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you.
for a term of 2 years starting August 26, 2024, and to expire October 26, 2026.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. I'll now call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And our third appointment, Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that council appoints Doug Cooley to the Olds Municipal Library Board, OML, for a term of 2 years, starting August 26, 2024, and to expire October 26, 2026.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. I call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Moving to our Rise and Report for FOIP Section 16, Item 1, Deputy Mayor Daley.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that we accept the information presented in regards to OFL as information, I guess.
Yes, thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Daley. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Item 2, Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that council accept for information the CEO's report on real estate.
Thank you, Councillor Cummings. Those in favor? That is carried. Item 3, we'll go with Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that council accepts the SRD RWC update as presented.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ryan. Call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. And once again, I'd like to thank all that were present for our meeting today, and welcome back. I adjourn this meeting at 4:48 p.m.